Go. We are recording. So you can take this breathing exercise sitting or lying down. If you are lying down and you're suffering from long COVID, I would suggest you have something under your head, whether that's a pillow, a cushion, even if you're in bed or in the floor, so that your head's just a little bit higher than your heart. So just looking for that. It could just be an inch. I've got a very, very thin cushion here. It doesn't have to be much, but just I'm making sure you feel comfortable and grounded. I'm going to begin to find my seated position. For those that are coming to sitting, as always, you could sit cross-legged, you could sit kneeling, you could sit knees on the floor. I've got some height under my hips. You might be sitting in a chair or on a sofa. What we're looking for here is to have the knees level with our hips or lower. If they're high up, our belly can't expand, the diaphragm becomes restricted and hips can be quite tight. So finding a way, whether it's 2 blocks, maybe it's 5 blocks, maybe it's lots of books or a bolster, whatever you have to bring your hips level with your knees or lower than if possible. If you're lying down, just see how it feels to be semi-supine, and that's with the knees bent, feet flat on the floor. So if that feels possible, this is a good place to be for this. Maybe the knees are resting on each other. If it feels better, have the legs extended and you are pretty much flat on the floor, maybe having some height under the knees just to allow your lower back to find a sense of rest. Taking time to settle into your shape. Whether you're lying on the floor or seated, is it possible to have a feeling that your spine is lengthening? So if you're seated, it might be that you imagine there's a golden thread in the centre of your head, gently pulling you up. If you're lying down, that golden thread is just gently pulling your neck. So you're finding a sort of sense of lengthening through the spine. Noticing where your chin is as well. If it feels like it's jutting up or out, just tucking it that centimetre or two. We're looking to lengthen through the cervical spine, which is the neck. So neck is an extension of the spine, but just making sure it's not feeling too crunched. Softening into shoulders. Really welcome to close your eyes at this point if you'd like to, or perhaps you just soften your gaze. Bringing your awareness to your jaw area. And you might like to push your tongue into one cheek, making a little bit of a funny face, rolling your tongue around the bottom of the lower lip to the other cheek and underneath the top lip. And you might like to take that a couple of times, even changing the direction of the tongue. Releasing through our jaw area, which often we tighten in stress. When we're busy, we're not thinking about it. Allowing your tongue, if possible, to rest in the lower part of your mouth. And if you're not already, beginning to breathe in and out through your nose. So as I often say, there's no right or wrong way to breathe. There's just a more efficient way to breathe. And that more efficient way is breathing in and out through the nose. So if at any point you feel like you need to take a mouth breath, know that that is welcome. Okay? Through our breathing exercise, we're looking to invite a sense of calm, a sense of ease. So if we begin to get stressed about breathing through the nose, or it feels uncomfortable or it feels restrictive in any way, take a couple of mouth breaths if that's where you're at. Taking your time to simply notice your breath in this moment. And to begin with, we're going to try and begin to reduce the speed of our breath. So with that, perhaps it's a sense that you can feel hardly any air travelling in and out through your nostrils. For those that have attended previous sessions, sometimes I call it subtle breathing, a sense that if there was a feather just below your nose, below your nostrils, that feather would hardly be moving. Trying to keep your jaw in a soft, relaxed shape, position. And through slowing or reducing the speed of a breath, we are going to begin to create a little bit or a feeling of air hunger. You may find that you have that urge to take a deeper breath. If it doesn't feel stressful, doesn't feel uncomfortable, and you can work with it, allowing it to pass through, to pass over, staying with that reduction of speed. But if it gets stressful, if it just doesn't feel right, it feels too much, taking a deeper breath, taking a pause, and then coming back. It's that feeling of your breath being light, almost invisible. Taking a break if you need to. If it's helpful to visualize the nasal hairs in your nose and your nostrils, it's as though they are hardly moving at all as you inhale and exhale. We're going to begin to transition into taking a deep breath, and it doesn't mean a bigger breath necessarily. So we're going to begin to find our hands on our rib cage. Now for those lying down, hopefully you can have your hands on your rib cage and your elbows resting on the floor. For those of you seated, it might be that you tuck your elbows into your body a little. So if the elbows are out, the arms have to do more work. So it might be a little bit more relaxing for your shoulders, your upper body, to have your elbows tucked in. But feeling into the rib cage, you can feel the ribs underneath your hands. Noticing your ribs moving with each inhalation and exhalation. And here we're encouraging diaphragmatic breathing, so the diaphragm does most of the work for our breath. Noticing your ribs expanding upwards and outwards as you breathe in. And gently shrinking back as you breathe out. So using our hands to guide the breath and to feel into a diaphragmatic breath, feel into the rib cage expanding as the lungs fill with air. Resting your arms, your hands whenever you need to. Perhaps you can notice or feel into the rib cage expanding a little in the back of the body as well. So a sense of your rib cage expanding and contracting. It's almost as if you're putting up an umbrella and then gently closing it. Soft, fluid movement. And with the rib cage expanding and contracting, we know the diaphragm is beginning to work. Resting your hands, your arms if you haven't already, for those that are seated. And now we're going to begin to slow our breath a little. So a few options here. You might like to breathe in for 4 and out for 4, or in for 5 and out for 5. We're going to begin with an equal ratio, sum of each breath. It may even just be 3 and 3, whatever works for you at this point in this time. Working with your own count. So maybe you're quietly counting to yourself. You could be using the tips of your fingers to gently connect and press into your body. Counting mechanism. Knowing that you're welcome to take a break at any point. If you have the need to take a mouth breath, please do. Trying to avoid creating any stress through our breathing exercises and breath work. So ensuring you're working, you're pacing yourself. If that equal inhalation-exhalation feels as though it's coming with ease, perhaps you begin to extend your exhalation. So if you were breathing in for 4, breathing out for 6. If you're breathing in for 3, breathing out for 5. Extending your exhalation by a couple of counts. Gently checking in with your jaw, tongue resting. If you are seated and maybe getting a little tired, just ensuring there's still space in the upper body, length through the spine. And maybe you begin to integrate all 3 of the exercises we've been working with today. So still working with reducing the speed, that sense of having hardly any air passing through your nostrils. The sense of your rib cage expanding. If it's helpful to bring your hands back to your ribs, please do. And still working with slowing the breath down, whether that's an equal ratio, so an equal timing of inhalation, exhalation, or perhaps you're extending your exhalation, making that a couple of counts longer. I'm going to be here for another couple of minutes, knowing that you're welcome to take a break or pause at any point. When you feel ready, if you're still practicing breath work, letting it go, and coming back to just normal rhythm without making any effort. So following your inhalation and exhalation, just watching your breath. And taking a moment just to notice if anything has changed, whether that's in your mind, in your breath, physically in your body. I'm just going to take a moment while we're still recording to explain what we were doing for those that are not familiar with this technique. So breathing light, so we breathe very softly and lightly as if we're trying not to move the nasal hairs in the nose, as if we're trying to not move the imaginary feather just below the nose. We're creating a sense of air hunger, that kind of feeling of needing to take a slightly deeper breath. For those familiar with stasis breathing, you'll know that we're beginning to increase our CO2 tolerance, our carbon dioxide tolerance. So our body's getting used to having a bit more carbon dioxide in our body. And that in turn is enabling more oxygen uptake to the tissues and into the body. So it's a little bit about balance. We need the carbon dioxide for the oxygen to be able to transfer to tissues. I won't go into in-depth science today, but that's what we're trying to do there. When we breathe really slowly as well, we're allowing the pockets of nitric oxide that we now know begin to form in the nostrils. We're allowing those to begin to take form as well. And nitric oxide is antibacterial and antimicrobial, so we know as we're breathing in and out that nitric oxide is then cleansing the breath before it reaches the lungs. The deep sensation, so beginning to work with the diaphragm, the muscle that takes about 75% of the work of our breathing here. The classic movement of diaphragmatic breathing is the rib cage moving out. And for those of you that have practiced the strap breathing, it was a while ago now, we might come back to it. We put a yoga strap or a scarf around our rib cage, and that can be really useful as well, instead of using the hands, to feel the rib cage moving upwards and outwards. So we know our diaphragm's beginning to turn on or switch on. For those that are not used to diaphragmatic breathing or have lost that tone, it's really helpful to begin to work that muscle, increase its capacity and its strength. And then at the end, we were coming into slow breathing. So the equalizing breath, 4-4, 5-5, 3-3, wherever you are. And then for some of you, you might have extended the exhalation as well. So we're going to slow the breath down, because we know somewhere between about 5 and 6-ish breaths is ideal during a minute, to allow that lovely gas exchange to take place, to allow the nervous system to be calm, for everything to work really well. Extending the exhalation, that's moving us more into the kind of rest and digest side of the nervous system. So when we inhale, that's active. So we're inhaling, that's an active sympathetic nervous system side. So it's sometimes described as fight or fright. I know you will have heard me say I don't like that description very much, but if you've heard that, that's what we're doing. We're activating the nervous system when we breathe in. Just as we get out of bed, we're activated. If we go for a run, we're activated. But what we're then training the nervous system to do is we extend our exhalation is to come into the rest and digest side. So the exhalation is rest and digest, and if we can extend it a bit more, we're then training our autonomic nervous system, so that's that parasympathetic and sympathetic, to come into rest and relaxation as well. So I'm hoping that makes a little bit of sense. And then we were trying to integrate all three, which can be quite complicated as well and quite tough. So that's what we were doing today, the kind of light, deep, slow breath. I'm going to stop our recording.